is Frieren from... This is a very special video where I will be covering both episode 5 and episode 6 of Frieren because I was very depressed and sick a couple weeks ago. So the gang find themselves in the Bear region. Just like every episode of the season thus far, it seems food and eating are a big theme. As the trio are sat at a table eating their very deli-couse looking food, Stark comments on there actually being cities in the Northern Plateau. This leads into a lot of world building, where we learn from Granny that the Bear region is the only grain-producing region on the Northern Plateau, which obviously means there is an industry here, and thus a city would be born from it, as there are lots of economic opportunities for people. So there has always been jobs for people. And that's what I like about Frieren the most, is these characters exist in this believable world that's realistic despite it being based in magic. That groundedness is much more rewarding as we are not viewing the perspective of the world from Frieren, Stark, or Ferns. In many ways, we are viewing the characters with their own perspectives living in a world with other perspectives, which fits in with the themes of this show, as a lot of what we see in Frieren is people's perspectives just on things. I mean, Stark and Fern, as an example, is how two like-minded people with many aligned perspectives can still be on different pages relatively, which just so happens to be kind of a common thread throughout these two episodes. Stark overhears someone discussing Bowshaft, to which Fern explains that she heard from Heiter that long ago, most of the continent was ruled by a single great empire. Bowshaft was a liquor that was offered to the Emperor, and Heiter blamed Frieren for never being able to drink it. This is when Frieren runs into an old friend, Foss, who notices that her party has since changed. He then tells them that he found Bowshaft, the Emperor's spirits, and needs help since he could use some with his magic. Or use someone with his magic. They are brought to a mine he's dug himself, which reveals himself to be a dwarf. Plus, since he was young, he's dedicated his life to finding Bowshaft, which the hero party had to turn down helping him with 50 years ago because, you know, they had to defeat a demon king. They find a chamber where Fern reads ancient Elvish written by a person named Milliard, which impresses Foss. So Foss brings Frieren over to a door where she immediately gives up removing the magic spell from it because it would take too much time. I must say that I love how Frieren, due to how they've drilled this into her head, that she must make good use of her time and not dilly-dally because her human party probably will die before she even gets halfway through removing spells. It's kind of cute, but also really funny. Foss offers 20 Reich coins because he's been searching for this for over 200 years now. In a surprise, Stark and Fern insist they help him because of the big payout from the job, which apparently creeps out Frieren, which is just so cute. I mean, this episode was just really cute, wasn't it? So they agree, especially after hearing it will only take 3 months, which, you know, I like that Frieren, if it's only 3 months, still keeps the others in mind. Though later on, Frieren tells Fern that this entire thing really isn't worth it because Bowshaft doesn't even taste good. In fact, this whole story is just the creation of elves with too much time on their hands. We then see a flashback to hundreds of years ago where Frieren actually met Milliard, who is a very distinguished looking elf, Ooga Booga. Well, it turns out that Bowshaft was just cheap liquor that Milliard inscribed a marking on because she was just kind of bored. Yet, people like Foss dedicate their lives to such worthless junk. And that's what it turns out to be, as Foss's 200-year dedication ends in, well, disappointment. But when Frieren recalls Heiter saying that even if it's bad, he'd still love to share it with friends, because that's how a bad drink is best experienced, and laughing it off with friends. And, you know, it's really funny because when I saw the Milliard flashback, you know, I was thinking to myself, you know, what would I do? And before Heiter even said it, I said to myself, I'd do the same thing. I'd laugh it off and just put it behind me. Because while the payoff wasn't spectacular, I mean, it's a story, it's an adventure, an experience that I had, and at the very least, I get to share it with people I care about and laugh it off. I think what this was saying is that there is closure to this adventure. Okay, as I was recording that, I recorded a 25-minute commentary, and I rendered it, and I ran out of space, so it only rendered like the first 4.5 minutes. So here I am, continuing on the next day. So, as I was saying, this urban legend or myth, think about all of these mystery videos you and I watch on YouTube, from creepy and suspenseful all the way to joyful and fun. How many of these mysteries ever end in these grand outcomes that change the world? Mostly none, right? It's all easily explainable stuff that you can see coming a mile away. But the journey sweeps us up off of our feet, and we get swept up in the pageantry and the excitement. But you know, I kinda like that, because at least we get closure. Now in Norm Company territory, the gang are eating some pretty hard bread as goods are no longer circulating in the region, which is apparently to do with the Norm Company, who is seen as controlling the entirety of humanity in the Northern Plateau due to their top-tier logistics and the number of forces they have. However, when they go to enter, the boy at the entrances notices Frieren and they suddenly leave. They are then brought to Norm, the president of the Norm Company. And he, obviously, knows her as Frieren of the Hero Party, and she will be paying off the debt of 80 years that she's owed. And I love how Fern shakes Frieren and she puts her fingers together, giving the classic Frieren face. Oh my god, so funny, dude. I can't even. It's just totes. So Frieren gives Norm all of the money they have, and to simply put, it's not enough, because it's never enough when it comes to imaginary currencies we make up in our heads, baby. So they enslave Frieren and send her to the mines to work for 300 years. I need to see fan art of Frieren as a miner. Oh, phrasing. At first, I thought this was a joke, but it's not. Oh, no. Because when money is involved, there are no jokes. So they try to go and buy back Frieren, which is, as you'd probably surmise, impossible. But in the mines, Frieren gets along pretty quick with all of the tall, muscled-up miners. Funny phrasing again. And uses her magic to locate the direction that they should mine in to make their jobs more efficient and better. Because, of course, Frieren, with all of that non-existent muscle, probably won't be able to work in the mines. But you know what I say? Just like how I downloaded the Muscular Tifa mod for Final Fantasy VII, we should do the same for Frieren. But he is visited by Norm in the mines, where it comes out that this is all just Norm trying his best to rebuild the Norm Company, as their logistics have fallen into such a dire strait. So when Frieren showed up, he considered this a gift from the goddess and sent her into the mines as a way to make sure that Frieren finds the silver ore vein they need to make the trading company flourish like it once had. And she does, which frees Frieren in, as you'd suspect, no time, and makes sure that Fern doesn't have to raid the mines, which I honestly think that's what we were all probably thinking would happen to a degree, so that's really funny that the author of Frieren took that into account. This episode of Frieren was quite wonderful, if I have to give it a label. I think I quite enjoy how, thus far, this season tends to mirror itself with every episode, that it's building upon a core foundation, which is this idea of bonds, which lasts throughout hundreds of years, which is very obvious, but let me continue. Fass's introduction was interesting because it tackles such a topical topic that is this desire to get to the bottom of a journey and only ending up dedicating all of your life to the conclusion, which often is just kind of junk. In other words, being so swept up in the chase that the outcome doesn't at all match up with the effort. But I like how it ends, as it's just one outcome of how these types of stories can conclude. Either way, the common thread in all of these types of stories is that at least they had a conclusion at all, because all of the things in this world that are hyped up into oblivion are typically never going to deliver on that expectation. So why do we even do it? I mean, look at recent memory with these things like Marvel's constant blunders, video game industry deciding it just wants to jump off a cliff and kill itself, animation houses constantly through decades and decades going through turmoil. These are examples that are obviously influenced by much greater pulls outside themselves. And the point is that the products they deliver never deliver, and we all end up at the end of the day, sometimes jaded and cynical. I can't speak today. But here is the thing, we see this with the Norm Company portion of the episode, how even that is not the end. It's the classic mining until you find diamonds meme. Because there is another outcome in which you keep mining for silver ore and you will find it. which is basically what Foss did too. It may take 200 years in all of your life, but the people who dedicate themselves to the things they love will often find the outcome worth it, even if the reward is not worth it. Take me, for example. I do videos every single day pretty much, and I've done so for the last 15 years. I'm broke, I don't have many friends, I'm depressed, I'm exhausted. Did I mention I'm a bipolar content creator? I have 3 YouTube channels and a podcast that I can't even do right now because I'm just kind of tired. But here's the thing. I keep doing it because it's the process that I love, and I honestly know no other ways of living. This is just who I am, at least for now. And you know what? I might as well just keep on mining, because while it doesn't seem that I have achieved much during this journey, I actually kinda have. Because, who cares about the reward at the end anyways? I want experiences, stories, journeys. That's the reward. That's what I want. Now let's get on to episode 6, which I think is another banger. Obviously. This episode opens with death and destruction at the hands of even more demons, which, I'm not gonna lie, got me excited because of the prospect of seeing even more demons being killed in this series. Because, let's be real, this anime is so good at making demons dying a cathartic looking thing, let me tell you. But the devastation they cause is still very serious, and an entire village is destroyed, falls to the demons as a carrier pigeon carrying a note is sent out. In the Frieren region, we see, no way, Methode? The nice-smelling mage that Frieren was almost corrupted? I love her, she's my favorite. But right after Genau, a mage who was sent to this village, who has apparently no attachment, despite this being his hometown, by Syrie, he finds his childhood friend who he used to bake bread with as a kid. He picks him up, carries him over to the church where he gives his final words, asking if all of the others are safe, which is kind of just just really sad. Now, here is what I found most fascinating about it. Genau and Methode seem like they are very aloof characters, especially Genau, who during the moments of his childhood friend dying and him grasping at him in his final moments, he still speaks and carries a cold face. Yet, in the church, he acknowledges how unfair the situation is, and that it should be they who die and not these villagers because they don't choose to fight. They do. Methode tells him that this isn't his fault and that he should rest. He should think about what this really means. But just as soon as this happens, we see a bird, one of Genau's eyes, captured by Frieren's magic. Most likely a precaution from the trio, and yeah, my instinct seems to be really on point this week because, wow, that turns out to be true. And what's nice is Frieren immediately comments on how Genau's magic had a particular bloodlust in it that made Frieren think that he was a demon. Now, what this means is that Genau, despite his calm demeanor, actually feels a deep, seething hatred for demons and what has happened here. Outwardly, and maybe what he says, he represents himself as having no attachment to really anything. But not even he, I think, realizes his attachment and how strong that is when he is casting a magic that is filled with so much bloodlust for demons. That, my friends, right there is some pretty darn rootin' tootin' riding, partner. Now go collect those 50-star bottle caps. Yeehaw. I particularly like the moment when Stark prays because of his past with demons destroying his village, which kind of stuck in my mind here. I like the different outcomes in Genau and Stark. Stark is much more in touch with his emotions and really wears them on his sleeves. I mean, look at this poor, cute, adorable boy. He's red. But Genau, he's muted, brown. He doesn't flinch. But I think there is a nuance, and we can't really just say that Stark and Genau are opposites. I think they're one and the same. It's just that they express themselves differently. Genau just chooses to push past his fear to do what he must, and that's being cold. But much like how we know Stark takes things seriously despite him being goofy and so totes, we also know that Genau is just as tender on the inside, despite how he presents himself on the outside. Think of it this way. They're sort of the same characters, just different ways of expressing what they've went through. And this is where the last episode ties into this one. These are the last of the chivalric order of Norm Company's military. Genau comments that their captain was a far better warrior than the village deserved, and Frieren comments how he was even stronger than Stark is, who, as a reminder, defeated a solar dragon. Even if Stark doesn't think that that's a high bar, it kinda is. But the demon who did this is still alive, and so their efforts are not in vain. There is still much left to do, and that is put the fear of humanity into the demon who did it. I like the shadows cast on Frieren's face here because it represents that there are two sides to humanity. One that sees the light of peace, which is represented through the church, and the shadow on her face, which is kind of like their vengeful wrath. But I could just be looking into this way too much. So Methode tries to figure out what killed this captain, and Stark chimes in that her movements are unrealistic, and thus, based on the injuries, the demons may have been using two swords. While that's happening, Frieren and Fern discuss their game plan, where they figure the demon is outside of mana detection range. But seeing as Fern is giving the Fern aura, they decide to eat, and they will continue to eat, what is basically one notch below hardtack. It didn't hit me until this episode, but this is another instance of food being really big in this series, even hard bread, which I love because I've recently actually been wanting to make an insanely large hambubba, like, you know, how it is in Frieren, but for my cat. And you may be asking why I'd feed such a large hambubba to my small kitty. Well, So Frieren asks Methode her thoughts on the sitch, but they get distracted, especially Methode, by Fern's eating of large hard bread. But then, Stark delivers dinner to Genau as they both eat some large, hard bread. And I gotta say, I love the sound effect they use because I'm pretty sure that's just like a stock sound effect of bricks. Well, Stark asks why he doesn't just ask him to help bury the bodies instead of creating a new barrier. It turns out that the clergy don't often like the idea of cremation, despite the smell of decaying corpses that attract demons. You know, religious stuff. But Genau says something really interesting. He says that soon everyone will need to get used to it because of every village. They will soon encounter what has happened here. Does this mean that the age of demons are back and they are gathering up forces again? I don't know. That's kind of what it seems like, though. As history after 80 years, like, repeats itself again, heading into another war with demons. We know this. We're experiencing this right now, today, literally today. Go check the news. Go check it. If you can handle it, that is. I know I can't. As the gals eat large, hard bread, Frieren tells Methode how they got the summons. While Frieren was asleep like a cat under a tree, a squirrel climbs atop her butt with a scroll. Methode, though, is doing this because she is now a student under Serie. Wow! As Frieren is like, oh, Miss Frieren-sama, I turned her down. Call me a good girl, I'm begging you. Which I think is kind of funny on Frieren's side because she's basically just tolerating Serie at this point. So she asks Methode if she is running her ragged, but in response, she reveals her deepest and darkest, most wholesomest fetish, which is, of course, loving elves, something we know from Season 1. Which I just think might prove, after all of this time, the thing we didn't want to be true, but we know deep down is true, that loving elves is basic AF, and I'm not judging. I love elves too. I mean, for the love of God, people, Shadowheart exists. So Methode gets all yee, which gets Fern to get defensive as she cannot allow her daughter to be stolen by a mature woman. So what I have to say is, I'll fill in. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to take this bullet. No. This hail of gunfire. Go on, hit me! Well, they figure out that since dual wielding requires a balance of attack and defense, the wounds on the captain didn't match up to that style, which, me being me, the first thing I thought of was, well, I mean, of course, nobody uses dual wielding. That's the most useless skill in Skyrim, which goes to show just how much I need to play different games sometimes. And speaking of Shadowheart, I think I need to finish Baldur's Gate 3 still. Turns out bumping butts with Stark was the trick, because through double butt touch bumping powers, Methode figures that the demon is using 4 swords, meaning 4 arms. Listen, y'all, GamerSup's new set for their V-Card TCG called Divine Chaos is coming out. It's already out. It's out right now. This set includes 2 completely brand new elements, Divine and chaos and a new resource system. This is their biggest roster yet, with new VTubers and supports joining the set alongside some of your returning favorites filled with new stunning artwork. You can get 10% off your order of Set 3 when you use code CTactics at checkout. Every purchase gives me a commission. Thank you. Now back to the video. I think what may be happening here with this season is that it is the preamble to an all-out war with demon and humankind. While on the surface, it could seem like the hero party saved the world, maybe they only slowed down the demons just enough so that they can rebuild again. I mean, we know many of the Demon King's army has slipped away, and with this new 4-armed demon, you'd have to think that after suffering such a defeat, that they would go into hiding only to rebuild and become even stronger. It's the only thing that makes sense when you consider the grave and dramatic tone from this episode. Either way, I adore seeing Methode in the series again. She's just, I mean, God, she's just so damn funny. And you're probably right if you're thinking what I'm thinking. But that's the thing. Genau and Methode returning to the plot suggests something bigger is happening because it is Serie who sent them. My estimation is that Serie is the first to act on this, and really know about this because of her gut instinct in her elven stomach. And I could be wrong, I very well could be. But my own elven stomach is telling me that Season 3 may be one of the most action-packed of the series. Thank you so much for watching. You can check out my next video on Episode 7 right here, right now. Also, be sure to check out my Chainsaw Man and Don channel where I cover new chapters every week. Make it a great day or not, the choice is yours.